Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Welcome to Vibin It. We're super excited to have you here, and we have a really awesome guest today who is gracing us with his lovely presence, and his name is Stefanos Sifandos. Did I say your last name right?
You did, yeah.
I love how it rhymes. Stefanos Sifandos. It's very fun to say.
It does a bit, doesn't it?
And
Yeah.
he is, I guess we can call him a love and relationship coach, even though his expertise is broader than that. But today we wanted to have him on to talk about masculine and feminine dynamics and polarity and relationships and communicating and clearing up misunderstandings. And just, we're going to give you a lot of info to help you, whether you're in a relationship or wanting to cultivate a relationship, as far as masculine and feminine dynamics go. So thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Lindsay, I know you always like to start with your questions, so I'm going to hand it over to you, and then we'll dive in from there.
So the thing, I would say the place that we always like to set a nice foundation is talking about where you come from, why you decided to get into this work, just kind of like your story. And a lot of people are like, okay, well, that's going to take a long time. And if it does, great, because we love details. We love to know about our guests. But just kind of, just give us a little background about, who you are and what brought you here.
Yeah. So, well, I'm here in the US. So I live in the US. So I'll start with the gross or the simple, right? The fit where I am physically. So I'm here. I live in Austin, Texas. I'm here because my wife's American. I'm an Australian. Can you sort of tell there? I've got a different accent. And but I also lived in Greece and Italy because I'm half Greek, half Italian. So I spent most of my life, at the beginning of my life, in Greece. My first language was Greek, and coming to Australia was very foreign for me. Couldn't speak English, struggled a lot as a kid, felt very isolated. I remember Dr. John Demartini saying our voids often become our greatest values. And as a kid, I really felt, again, alone. I didn't feel understood. There's a lot of violence in my family, physical abuse and emotional abuse, and a lot of just being taken, uprooted from one place, going to another, missing family, not having connections, just that sense of loneliness, right? So it's no wonder that as an adult, I focused on cultivating healthy, conscious relationships, cultivating deep and intimacy with self and with others, because it's something that I didn't feel I had as a kid. And so whilst, I'm obviously happy to go into any details, nothing's off limits with me. It never used to be like that, though. I used to be very in the shadows, used to hide a lot, used to mask my insecurities and fears with aggression and violence and just, high risk taking and adrenaline seeking, whether it was in business or sport or my intimate sexual encounters, whatever it was, right? And so I had to go do a lot of deep work on myself and continue to do so. Like, it's not, I think if we're alive, if our hearts are beating, if we're aware of ourselves, we have some form of metacognition about, thoughts about the thoughts, and we're here on this planet roaming. I think we're always going to be growing, and that can sometimes come with growing pains, and it can also sometimes come with deep revelations. And I'm really grateful that my growing pains are less intense or less repetitive, not repeating the same shit over and over again, because I've been more aware of myself over the years. And, I get to experience a few more revelations and bursts of inspiration than I once used to. And what I realized was that unless our relationship to ourselves, and for me, speaking very personally, my relationship to myself wasn't in integrity. It was very disjointed. It was very aggressive. I was very angry at myself. I was just playing out what I witnessed as a kid.
Yeah.
My father was very angry at himself. He hated himself. He hated his life. I took that personally. We form our sense of identity and self during our formative years. And that impacts us whether we know it or not, unconsciously. Sigmund Freud wasn't responsible for bringing the Western world, the unconscious mind, but the different parts of our reality and consciousness have been around for many millennia. But he brought that in a tangible way to our world, where we started to understand that our unconscious mind that perceives everything in our environment still filters and interprets and stores those experiences. And sometimes those experiences, if they're not dealt with in a healthy way, they leak out in behavior, or they leak out in the way we communicate or the way we feel about ourselves. And that was me. That's, none of us really exempt from that. And so I just left a train wreck of broken relationships to myself and to others, and I wasn't taking responsibility for that. And it wasn't until I really did and made a decision to go deep into, okay, who am I as a man? Who am I as a human being? What does it mean to be a healthy person? And then actually unpack all of that, but not just unpack it intellectually, unpack it in a way that, well, my body needs to feel this and integrate this. What does that look like? So I delved into psychosomatics, delved into sexuality, delved into polarity dynamics, attraction dynamics, intimacy, delved into inner childhood wounding, childhood trauma therapy, trauma studies, like all of that, like behavioral science. So it's really going deeper into what makes me, what's the constitution of me, but also how am I affecting others? And how is my affect, the way I feel, how is that impacting others? And so I really just delved into trying to make the unconscious conscious. And so it could be more tangible so that I could not leave such a train wreck behind in relationships and hurt people and hide from people and be in my shadow. And that just brings me to where I am today, where I'm very blessed to I suppose, teach what I need to learn the most, what I needed to learn the most, and still do. I think relationships are very healthy for everyone to unpack, right? And doing so has really provided a sense of freedom for me that I've never experienced before. So that's in a nutshell where I am today. And also, one of the reasons why I'm able to have a very amazing relationship with my wife that, let me be very clear, doesn't come without any difficulties. We had a very, it wasn't an argument, but it was a very painful, difficult conversation early this morning that we had together as a couple. That, when I think about it, as I'm talking about it, it brings up some emotions because it's highlighting some areas where I'm not showing up as a man or as a partner, I'm discounting, I'm disregarding, I'm holding judgments. And that's painful. To have to own that and admit that, that's can be fucking intense. And also to realize that there's some stuff in our relationship that needs some improvement, and that's going to require effort. And effort sometimes can come with some pain, because we have to change and we have to then now refocus, and we're thinking we're on one track and now we're about to get another track. And so it's a journey, but I'm very blessed that I get to teach what I love learning about the most, which is human potential, the nature of reality, consciousness, relationships, sexuality. That's where I'm at today.
I love it. So listeners might know this, but you might not. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, so I deal with the unconscious. Like, that's my thing. So when you say, like, I decided to go within and make the unconscious conscious, like, that makes my heart very happy when people do that. My question is, though, because I know very well, as you do, you experience this, people can go on this track of, in your words, leaving a train wreck behind them for years. Like, I have family members who will never probably, understand this. So was there some sort of pivot or turning point where you were like, ugh, enough is enough, and kind of this come to know yourself moment where you're like, okay, I got to do something about this?
Yes, the catalyst for me was, funnily enough, intimate relationship, which highlighted a lot of my own pains and traumas and fears and insecurities and behavioral mechanisms that weren't healthy. And that was, she found out that I was extremely unfaithful in that relationship. And I don't say extremely lightly. And that was Pandora's box. That just then catapulted into, what the fuck am I doing with my life? And who am I being? And why is this happening? Because this isn't normal. And I thought it was, and I was justifying it. And that was the catalyst.
Good for you, man. I mean, I know I have no right to say I'm proud of you, but I'm a little proud of you. just for like taking that moment to examine, because we don't do that enough. We don't examine ourselves enough. So good for you. Sorry, Kelsey.
No, that's fine. And I wanted to say too, that I really appreciate you for teaching a lot and speaking a lot to relationships, because I feel like that's one of the most fulfilling aspects of our life. And without true intimacy and connection, whether it's romantic or otherwise, we just really can't be happy as people. It's impossible to feel alone and be happy. Like, it's just not a thing. So I think spiritual teachers can talk all day about the universe and the stars and all this cool stuff, but that's not actually going to help you in your real life. But relationship work actually does really, really help you. So I commend you for teaching this. And also, I have a question that I want to dive into, which is, or I can give like personal context to this. So my boyfriend is extremely masculine and I'm extremely feminine. So when people go into the teachings of like, this is kind of the energy of the feminine and this is the energy of the masculine, like we really embody that. And I think sometimes, even though it's really beautiful and awesome and creates a lot of dynamics and polarity, it can lead to a lot of misunderstanding because we literally like can't get each other because we're so different. So I don't really have like a specific example, but what would you say to how can people build the bridges of understanding when that polarity is really active?
You've touched on a couple of really important points around, yes, we carry polarity in certain areas of our relationship, but there's also a chasm and a potential misunderstanding in other areas, right? And polarity dynamics plays an important role in attraction and sexuality, but also how we connect and feel a give and receive love. Absolutely, right? But there are so many other factors that feed into that as well, like our values, our unconscious and conscious belief systems, our thought patterns, our history, the way we interpret the world, what's really important to us, where we feel most safe. Now, I alluded to this earlier. I mentioned something about judgment. And so what happens is we often, through our unconscious biases, we judge people without knowing. We make judgments and project our judgments onto people without knowing it, which causes distance. Because what's happening is when we're making a judgment on someone, they feel that. They feel that neurologically. They feel it through the enteric nervous system, which feeds information through the vagus nerve into the brain, into the centers of our brain that are responsible for, the way we socially interact. And we'll maybe pause. We'll move with trepidation if we feel that we're being judged. That scares us. And sometimes we'll place judgments on people, even our partners, the people that we love the most, because we don't understand them. And because we're almost unwilling to understand them, maybe because of past conditioning or because society's told us that for whatever reason, we just don't need to understand people, or we're scared of being wrong, or we think that they're going to reject us if we speak our truth. Myriad reasons, right? Infinite, you name them. We hold back and we judge. And judgment is that form of protection. Now, this isn't the only reason that there can be a miscommunication or a misalignment. But more often than not, it's these projected unconscious judgments that we have of someone else. It's really a reflection of us, of something that's happening within us that we're not taking ownership of. I want to give you a personal example, but I also want to be mindful not to be too personal. Not that it's too much information, but just be mindful of the boundaries there. So not too long ago, I would be really judgmental of my partner when she wanted things done in a particular way. And it would get to a point where she wouldn't say anything. That's her conditioning, right? Her upbringing of maybe walking on eggshells. She wouldn't say anything, and then would get pretty angry. And I would feel like I'm being controlled. Now, as a kid, I was really controlled. So I have a big thing with freedom, right? Now, my relationship to freedom has shifted dramatically over the years. But not that long ago, when she would have that conversation with me, I would project that she's trying to control me, that she's telling me how to do things. But what was really underneath that was, I'm not good enough. I'm doing it wrong. And that's not what she was saying. It's not what she was insinuating. It's not what she's even meaning at any capacity or any level. But because of my unresolved wounding or layers of that unresolved wounding, I'm now judging her, thinking she thinks I'm not good enough. She thinks I'm not enough. She thinks I'm doing it wrong. But that's just really my old stuff that's coming through. Now, what happens is when I'm feeling that, that's a very overwhelming feeling. And I feel like I'm being attacked. What do you do when you're being attacked? You fight back.
Defend yourself.
Defend yourself, yeah. So I'm pretty good at fighting. Did it for many years, whether it's verbal or physical. Now, of course, never been physical with any of my partners. but that aggression's there, right? And I'm feeling really threatened and really unsafe and immature and disconnected in that moment from what's really happening. So I attack back. Now, all of a sudden, we've got two people that ultimately mean well because they're just trying to feel safe, but they're completely disconnecting. Now, what does that do? That also does it. You can have the great healthy feminine polarity and healthy masculine polarity, but in that moment and in the lingering moments after that, and then depending on, your personality type and your wounding and how you relate, though, like how you have make-up sex, so to speak, or how you reconnect intimacy again. Make-up sex is one form of that. That can be an issue in and of itself, how that's done. But what's happening is in those moments, because of that judgment and the unconscious projections, what's happening is we're distancing and we're creating isolation, right? And so now all of a sudden where there was healthy masculine feminine polarity, in those moments is not. Now, if that happens enough times, you start to believe that it's the other person's fault. Sure, they're responsible for how they're showing up, but it's a complete negation of your own responsibility. That becomes problematic because now you're disempowering yourself because it's their fault. And if it's their fault, it's their problem to fix. Therefore, I'm just going to sit back and wait until they do something about that. That's disempowering.
I bet you everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is my relationship right now. We've all been through this. This is awesome. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're great. I was done on that part.
It is a very common thing. And, at the end of the day, we all want to just feel understood. We all just want to feel, that's it. We all just want to feel understood. We want to know that whoever we're communicating with gets us and understands our intentions and understands the meaning behind the words and that they see us exactly. And we can be our authentic self. And I think an important part of that is knowing that disagreements are going to happen. But I love that you talked about how you handle the aftermath of the argument. So Kelsey, unless you have something you want to say, I would love to dive into that. Like, what are your suggestions, recommendations, practices for a healthy resolution or aftermath of a fight or of a disagreement?
Yeah. And look, I'm not one to necessarily reinvent the wheel per se. And so what I mean by that is that the Gottman Institute has done amazing research in conflict between intimate partnerships. And one of the tools that we can use, which we personally use as well, if you're in the middle of a conflict or even post-conflict, like, you can sort of tell, like, okay, the argument's dying down now, the conflict's dying down. What has been shown to be fairly effective in reconciliation is go for a 40-minute walk. Literally clear your mind. Don't
together or alone?
Alone. No, okay. It's a great question. No, it's a great question. Alone.
Just to clarify.
Yeah. Go for that walk alone, at least 40, 45 minutes. Get some endorphins and dopamine moving through your body. Get your body feeling a little better. So it's a physiological state change. Do your best to not think about the argument or the conflict or your position or what you're going to rebut or how you're going to speak, or just completely forget about it. So it's what I call a deliberate distraction, a conscious distraction. Listen to some music, listen to an audiobook on anthropology, I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever you're interested in, right? Then come back and maybe still be alone, maybe read a book, again, listen to an audiobook, do something that needs to be done around the home, maybe some work, whatever it may be. And then after a couple of hours, come back to each other. But the trick with this is that you have these agreements prearranged. You both know that if the argument's getting out of hand or not really going anywhere or moving in circles, that you're going to both do this. Maybe do a crossword puzzle when you get back, or even do like a normal puzzle, something, right? Now, why is this important? Because it gives you an opportunity to create space from that conflict and then come back together with a new perspective. If you wanted to, you could think a little bit about, could ask yourself a question such as, can I see this from another perspective? Because literally just asking that question, Lindsay, as a clinical hypnotherapist, when you're asking that question, you're tapping into regions of your brain that are searching for that answer, both consciously and unconsciously, just by asking that question, because our neural attentive faculties are now, boom, I want to answer this question. I'm going to search for an answer. Do I do a Google search? Do I sit back and think about it? Do I ask my father? Like whatever it may be, you're thinking about that. So you could ask that question, because often we're stuck in our dense perspective that isn't really helpful, because it's just on repeat. It's an old behavioral survival strategy. It's a maladaptive coping strategy, which is basically a protective strategy we created as children to help us move through pain and trauma that worked at some level back then, but as adults doesn't really help, right? Because we're not in that intense situation. Like for me, as a kid, my father would be really violent. I'd hide a lot, right? As I got older, I'd stand up to him a lot. But let's focus on the hiding part. Like I'd hide a lot. Like in my intimate relationships, I would hide my feelings a lot. But then I would, behind the scenes, I would go do what I wanted. Like I was in the shadow behavior. That hiding strategy didn't help me. Because I thought I perceived my partner to be angry at me or upset at me or judging me, I would hide. I would maybe mask it with some loudness, create a fight, create division, and then I'd go do what I wanted to. And what I would do is I would go be with other women. That's what made me feel free, or made me feel, safe, or made me feel like I was worthy. But to get to those layers, like, you've got to unpack a lot of stuff. So back to the example, right? So you do that, and then you come together with a fresh sense of self. And you may have to rinse and repeat that process quite a few times. And there are so many other things that you can do. You can write each other letters, so you're expressing from a different place. You can wait a period of time, purposely not communicate about that. Do something together that's maybe fun and light, such as, later going for a walk together, or maybe playing a board game or something together. There's all these things that you can do, but you have to have intentions to come back to that conversation, not sweep it under the rug. So these are deliberate distractions. These are with the intention that we are going to come back to this in a particular way.
Yeah, and the intention of creating space to allow for those new perspectives and further understandings to come in. This is a really cool
Yes.
example, because something like this kind of happened the other day to me and my partner. And basically, long story short, I was feeling like, you're not tending to my needs. I need more connection, me. And then he was feeling like, lady, like, I only have so much energy to give. Like, I'm doing my best. He was feeling unsupported. So he was feeling unsupported. I was feeling untended to. And
maybe unappreciated and unseen.
Yeah. And so we kind of, not a tiff, but it was just the energy was like weird for a little bit. And we went to the gym and we had like a really long workout, like separate. It's a big gym. So we both did our thing for like 2 hours. And I was feeling so much better after working out, just from moving energy and getting the endorphins going. And then when I was working out, I was just having all these memories rush in of like why I love him so much and all these fun times that we had and whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was being unsupportive. And then I was like getting all like into my feels. And so after the gym, we came back together with so much more clarity and understanding and more calm communication. And we were able to both like reestablish that connection. So I think it just goes to show like another example of what you were saying. And it really does help. And it really does work to create a little bit of space, do what you can to feel a little bit better in that moment, and then reconnect from a more loving angle.
And there's a couple other stages if you wanted to go deeper, is process your own feelings. Like that was an example of you processing your own feelings and taking responsibility for that. So you're not projecting that shit onto your partner.
Right.
Next, you want to integrate, and you want to make sure you're putting pleasure back into your body, whether that's having a really healthy meal together, whether that's making love, whether it's having a long hug, have sex, kiss, go for, going to the ocean together. Like, put pleasure back into your body, go get a massage, whatever it may be. Because you want to integrate that teaching, you want to integrate that wisdom that's coming through you. That's a really important part.
I love that last step. That's really important, because
you're changing neurologically the pattern.
Yeah.
You're breaking a pattern neurologically by putting pleasure back in. You're telling the body and the mind and all various levels of the mind that you deserve to be feeling this level of connection and communication, this level of intimacy and love and being seen, appreciated, respected, accepted, heard, understood, all of that, right? These fundamental human needs. And so when you do that, you're reinforcing the truth of that.
And I think it's really beneficial because you teach your body and your mind and your spirit that like this relationship is safe because you always come back together. Like if connection is lost, you know how to reestablish it. And the both of you have an agreement to always reestablish if the connection is broken.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Lindsay.
Oh man, I'm just taking it all in.
We're integrating the information as it's
We're
coming to
integrating.
us.
So that makes a lot of sense why people always gravitate toward the makeup sex or the, I mean, that intimacy after an argument.
But it's unconscious, right?
Right. But it can also be, I think, and I know you would probably agree, not a good thing if there's no resolution, like if you're using it as a resolution.
Yes, that's right. Because then the pleasure integration, the pleasure being put back in the body becomes more a distraction and numbing because there's no deliberateness behind it. It's like we've come through, and you may not get a resolution immediately, but if you're committed to working through that and unpacking that takes time. That could take weeks and months. That's okay. But at some point, you've both got to say, let's agree to, it's not even agree to disagree, but let's just put this on pause. We're going to come back to it because it's important. Right now, we're just sort of going in circles. So let's put some pleasure into, let's be proud of ourselves for being willing to have this conversation. Let's integrate some pleasure. Now, if you want to have makeup sex, fuck yeah, go for it. But coming from a very different level of consciousness. Yeah. Like coming from a very different place, because you know that it's not, we're not doing this to, we're not going to have a snort of cocaine, or we're not going to have psychedelics, or we're not going to just go and binge eat, or we're not going to go and train for 4 hours because I want to forget about this argument. No. Or train meaning exercise for 4 hours. Like, no, I'm going to do this because we've come to a resolution and I want to put some pleasure back in my body without being a sadist or without being too extreme. What does that look like for us both? And what does that look like for us as individuals?
Yes, being much more aware and intentional of why am I doing this right now? I think that's a great question for any aspect of life, anytime. Why am I actually doing this? Why am I eating this thing for lunch? Something as simple as that. Is it because I feel empty, or is it because I really find pleasure in this thing? Why am I telling this person this secret about me? Is it because I want to feel seen or heard, or what is it? I have a question that was inspired by something you said earlier when you mentioned, maybe your partner was feeling like unseen or unappreciated. What were the words that you used exactly?
What my partner was feeling?
No, when I was giving my example and you were saying maybe he was feeling.
Oh yeah. So generally speaking, men particularly want to feel respected, accepted, understood, and then we want to be heard, we want to be seen, and we want to be felt.
Cool, because you basically just answered my question that I was going to go into, which was, on behalf of all the women listening, which mostly our podcast has female viewership and listeners, how can we really build our masculine partners up in a way where they do feel supported and what's the word that I'm looking for? Like held in a high status, like we really respect and appreciate and love them. How can we show that in a way where men receive it?
We often think, I'll answer it this way. We often, or we'll delve into it this way. We think that men want to be commended on their accolades because they have these egos. Like, for example, I remember my dad, he makes such a big deal when he, I don't know, cleaned up the kitchen or something, or cleaned up the living room. And he'd get so angry at my mum that she wouldn't accept that. It wasn't because he had a big ego and he needed her validation, but he did. It was his little boy inside of him that never got seen, come from a family of 8 children, right? And he just wanted to be accepted for who he was, and he wanted to be told, hey, you did a great job. But that over time, over many, many years, morphed into very unhealthy patterns of interaction with himself and with others, right? And so even now as an adult, I catch myself like doing something, and I almost want Christine, my wife, I almost wanted her to say, hey, you did a great job, But when I really delve a little deeper into that, there's 2 things that are happening. One, I had a very similar, again, being unseen as a kid, feeling very alone. I want to be seen for doing something good, but there's more of there's evolutionary thing to that as well. There's a primal thing to that. Whereas men have evolved to derive a great deal of their self-worth, their utility, and their value through their actions and contribution to their tribe and families. And we negate that and we forget about that. So for example, men over hundreds of thousands of years or even millions of years, you know, if you look at the humanoids, not just Homo sapiens, say Homo sapiens, I don't know, 250 to 400,000 years. But, you know, beyond that, well beyond that, our utility has been derived from our contribution to the tribe or to the group of people that we would be spending time with, because it really meant survival. Like if we do our job well, whether it's extending the perimeter or making a really good weapon or hunting food or whatever it may be, it literally meant the survival of our species, right? Particularly in a very volatile environment, physically demanding environment. So that's still in us at a genetic level. That's still part of who we are. And so we see, and this is how some of the complexity of society and contemporary culture has formed. When we see men that are so competitive, right? And these are distortions, these are hyper distortions, these are extreme expressions of masculinity, for example, or a particular character trait in the way that it's expressed in our society. But we see this yearning for men to be seen, to be validated, like to get the next level. I'm vice president, I want to be president, or I'm a manager, I want to be a junior manager or a senior manager, whatever it may be. Like status and titles is very important to us beyond just the egoic sense. Yes, there's an aspect of that, but there's also more than that. And part of it is because we really feel important and we really feel like we're contributing and we're making a difference to the people that we really care about. And we sort of forget that piece. And so if we can remember that a little more often, and I'm not painting a picture that, oh, woe is me, poor men, the victims, like, no, fucking definitely not. But there have been some, I shouldn't say but, and there have been some issues with, I'll come back. We've experienced various waves of feminist movement over the last 100, 150 years, and we've needed to, because the feminine and females have been oppressed and repressed in various ways. But what's also happened is that the pendulum swing, you know, one way has now swung the other way. That's not healthy either.
Overcorrecting.
Correct. And that's life. Life meaning that's the collective consciousness. That's where we're at. We overcorrect, we move in extremes, and eventually we'll come back. And as a byproduct of that, men have lost their sense of self. Men have denied them. Men are fearful. And if they're not fearful and withholding from the world saying, oh, I don't know what a woman wants, or I don't know how to be, they're being really hyper aggressive, trying to protect themselves. So we'll come back into a different correction. Like we'll move into greater homeostasis and balance. But that's probably going to take some time. And part of that is this question that you asked, Kelsey, is, okay, how do we honor and appreciate our men? Well, this is part of it. And then men have a role to do as well. Men have a big role. It's not just, it's now, oh, well, we've had this strong feminist movement, because there's still massive fucking inequalities in our access to resources and how men and women are perceived. Let's be honest, that's still around. That's a fact. And it's also changing dramatically. So we've just got to be careful not to hold scorn and hold this hate towards men, because women don't exist without men and men don't exist without women. We like it or not, we've got each other.
Right.
Like, yes, men are from Mars and women are from Venus to some degree, and we're also all living on Earth.
Right.
So we're going to make something work here. Yeah.
Hey there, thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to watch the extended version where you get the full podcast episode in a video format, just go to patreon.com/highvibe. The link is in the description. That's where you can become a supporter of the show, listen to all the episodes via video format, and each week you get extended versions of the show, meaning you get to see the pregame behind the scenes, and also you get an extended interview with whoever we're guesting, or if it's me and Lindsay, we usually pull cards for you guys, fun stuff like that. So go check it out. There's lots of cool goodies, including a free copy of my book, a free audio hypnosis from Lindsay. She's a hypnotherapist. And yeah, we just want to give you all the goods, all the content. So head over to patreon.com/highvibe to become a Patreon.
Or if you'd rather listen to the rest of this episode, head over to highvibinit.com, where you'll see all the links to everywhere that it's getting streamed. Click your favorite one and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for listening.